Well, joining us now with a selection of stories from the first editions is the writer and broadcaster Michael Dodd. Always a pleasure to see you, Mike. And you're starting off with the Mirror.
I am, yes. Tony Blair's got a cunning plan to sort out Gerhard Schroeder and Jacques Chirac. He's very angry about them, or we kind of know that. So what he's going to do is effectively try to sideline them with his secret plan, which the Mirror has exposed. So it's not really a secret anymore. But what the secret plan is he's going to cozy up to other people in Germany and in France. In Germany, he's going to cozy up with the Iron Frau, Angela Merkel. She's the sort of a Conservative Party leader equivalent in Germany, and they reckon that she's got a much more attractive vision of Europe than Gerhard Schroeder. And he's going to cozy up to Nicolas Sarkozy, of course, the man who wants to be the next president of France. He used to be buddy-buddy with Jacques Chirac, but they don't seem to get on too well now. In fact, I think Nicolas Sarkozy already was being courted by Downing Street. They're saying the wooing is about to begin, so maybe we ain't seen nothing yet. But the idea is that Tony Blair, according to the Mirror, sort of sees Jacques Chirac and Gerhard Schroeder as basically finished. They reckon that Angela Merkel will win the election in autumn, which she probably will in Germany, because Gerhard Schroeder's not looking too good. And so he's going to basically sideline them by doing that.
Very interesting indeed, a different picture of Europe there, certainly. Independent and nuclear waste.
Yeah, this is a story attributed to British nuclear fuels. Now, of course, the government is looking at the possibility of going nuclear in a bigger way in order to try and help things with greenhouse gases. And British nuclear fuels have never been particularly good at PR. I don't think have come up with another cunning plan because they're worried about what to do with the waste product, which the nuclear industry have never managed to solve. And the idea is to build a series of what they're calling Millennium Domes, which is a good PR stunt. And this says that they're buildings which are like Millennium Domes and put them around the country and put the nuclear waste inside these domes. Now,
attractive.
Right,
yeah.
And then
now,
what happens? We visit them and take our children? Or?
Yeah, well, it's not the kind of thing which environmentalists are going to be in raptures with. I mean, it has traditionally been regarded, if you regard nuclear waste as being treatable at all, the idea is to sort of bury it a long way down. But they're saying that this has put them in domes for 1,000 years, apparently, or up to 1,000 years. But obviously it makes them more exposed to terrorists, and if there's any leakage and they're up there at ground level, it's a bit of a worry. And in fact, they've got a quote here from someone saying, this is from a top official who's seen the plans. They look exactly like the Millennium Dome, and they seem just as bad an idea. So there you have it.
Now then, the front page of the Independent.
Yeah, there's a picture of Camilla. That's quite a good one, actually. Camilla with her thumb pointing towards Charles, and supposedly, although they're making this up really, congratulating William on having a much better degree than him there, Charles. William, of course, is proved by royal standards to be something of a brain box, heading for a 2-1. So that's their interpretation of the picture. But
just a second.
Yeah.
There was a Republican D. This, you got to be outed again. The Republican D crept in then.
Republican.
Yeah, because you're not terribly keen on the royals, are you?
Well,
by royal standards, he's brainy.
Yeah, it's probably pretty reasonable. I think even non-Republicans would probably agree with me there, I suspect. But I should stress it's all conjecture, because they actually put in brackets in the caption that that's what the Duchess of Cornwall might have said.
Right.
So, she
Dad got a
didn't.
2-2, didn't he, at Cambridge?
Considered somewhat of a lesser feat, I think.
Right.
So there you are. Now, Cherie Blair is in all the papers, and it seems to be a bit of a favourite target of the Sundays at the moment. Mm-hmm. And according to the Independent, she may be about to get her wings clipped. The Committee on Standards in Public Life apparently is looking at the idea about whether it's right for the wife of the Prime Minister to be travelling around pocketing money for giving talks. And the shadow leader of the House is quoted saying he thinks that he's very confident that they're actually going to step in and try and limit what Cherie Blair can do.
But she's giving legal lectures. I mean, she is qualified in that field, isn't she?
Yes, but if you look at her last little effort, I mean, it seemed to be that the reason that she was actually on the stand was because of her position in Downing Street, and she's flogging this book about wives of occupants of number 10. So I mean, she tries to have this double act, obviously, of sort of being the Prime Minister's wife on the one hand and having a totally different outlook on life as a legal person. But the speeches seem to be more about the wife bit than the legal bit, which of course is getting the Conservatives muttering a bit. Okay. In fact, so much so that the Mail on Sunday has a story on a similar theme, talking about the next woman in number 10, who they speculate might be Mrs. Brown, and she will usher in an era of personal prudence by contrast. Now this is a story which is attributed to allies of Gordon Brown, doesn't actually name them, but reckon that when the new Mrs. Prime Minister is in place, that there will be no foreign holidays as guests of Italian counts or guests of the rich and famous and things like that. And they're also going into great detail about the fact that relations between Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Blair not particularly good.
Okay. What about the sisterhood?
Well, this is a further elaboration because in that story I just mentioned they talked about allies of Gordon Brown but didn't actually mention who they were. But surprise, surprise, if you go further into the Mail on Sunday, there's a guy called Charlie Whelan, who I think used to work for Gordon Brown for a long time, and he's a Gordon Brown fan, and I think you might say that he may have had a hand in that initial story because he really comes out attacking Cherie Blair. In fact, he's talking about Cherie Blair's alleged obsessiveness with money, and he talks about how Deep Throat was outed himself, in fact, last week, and he says, of course, Deep Throat used to say, follow the money, and he says, same with Cherie Blair if you want to actually uncover what she's on about. And he has this story here about how in the early days of the Labour administration the Cabinet decided to have a pay freeze which included the Prime Minister, and he quotes a conversation with Tony Blair where Tony Blair was worried about telling Cherie that his salary was going to be frozen. So a little bit of stirring there from Charlie Whelan.
And yet more about Cherie in the Times.
Last one, promise. Cherie Blair supposedly is going to Kuala Lumpur, and it's alleged in the story in the Times that she's going to get involved in opening of a shopping complex there. Not just any one, but a Palace of Infinite Indulgence.
Wow.
Which is quite a big shopping complex. Now,
what's the address?
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently it's a good address. But the question is she just going to attend a charity function there, or is she actually going to attend the grand whiz-bang opening of the shopping complex? And there seems to be some dispute about this.
Okay.
Now, why is
Downing Street trying to distance itself from this one.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was just going to say, why has the Times chosen this rather unflattering picture of Camilla, the Prince's wife?
Well,
on their
perhaps,
front
I don't know.
page.
Perhaps they don't like it. A lovely picture of Camilla poking her tongue out there. And Prince Charles with his look of that sort of those bloody people look. They're peering at the crowds from the balcony. But I'm going to say something nice about Camilla.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I am. If we flip over to the news of the world,
very quickly, but
Camilla wore the same dress that she wore on a wedding day.
Isn't that
It was
nice?
recut. Well, I think that's excellent recycling, and I think Camilla should be commended for this.
New hat and clutch bag though, so she's
Well, yeah, so it looks a little bit different, but that's okay.
New
I
accessories.
think green people around the world will pay tribute to Camilla.
Michael
Dodd,
Dodd?
thank you very much indeed.
You're watching Sky News, and coming up in our next hour, more reaction to that historic deal to cancel £22 million in debt owed by some of the world's poorest countries. All that coming up next. Stay with us.
This summer, get the body you've always wanted with the new 96-page Atkins Bikini Diet Book. Free inside every copy of tomorrow's Mail on Sunday.
My car's covered for a learner driver on that, is it? Quoting me well happy you have there. Up to second. No, second. Stop here now. Now, into reverse. Forward. Whoa! I'm still happy.
Call now and save up to £200 on your motor insurance. Call 0800 828 829 or buy online and let us quote you happy.
I never seem to really hit it off with women.
Well, you're not going to, looking like that. Image consultants, my friend really needs your help. Let me do the talking.
Hi. Nice shirt. I like it. Right. Well, oh dear. Green is so not your colour.
Yellow Pages. Whatever you want, just yell.
Hi, Barry Scott here, asking whether you have problems with soap scum, limescale, ground in dirt. They're a challenge for some household cleaners, but not for Sillet Bang, the incredible new cleaning sensation. Just spray it on and wipe that scum away. Limescale is simply calcium carbonate that sticks. Look how Sillet Bang dissolves this solid chunk. So limescale isn't a problem anymore. Look how clean it gets this old penny. New Sillet Bang Grime and Lime. Bang, and the dirt is gone.
Now at B&Q, we've up to half-price Monaco garden furniture. This recliner chair is under £18. Save on gazebos, hammocks, and save £117 on this table and 6 chairs. That may just sit up.
Hi. Hi, it's me. It's Jack Nicklaus. How do you like Polaris World? You want to play a few holes? Maybe tomorrow, Jack? Hey, it's me again. How about a few holes after lunch?
Maybe tomorrow, Jack.
When you buy a Polaris World villa, you get so much more than just a luxury property.
Maybe tomorrow, Jack.
The only problem is fitting it all in. Luxury Spanish properties from Polaris World.
You could have been a contender. You had all the skills. You just slipped the net. This year, someone will pass, trick and shoot their way to the big time. That someone will win a professional contract with Chelsea. If you were born between the 1st of September 1987 and the 1st of January 1989, call 0901 2010 442 to apply for Sky One's regional trials. Football icon on Sky One.
History in the making. Hundreds of thousands, millions of lives will be changed by this news.
Bono hails a breakthrough in making poverty history. Some of Africa's poorest nations have their debts wiped out.
This is not a time for timidity, but a time for boldness, and not a time for settling for second best, but for aiming high.
Gordon Brown brokers the deal at a meeting of G8 finance ministers. Also, part of the family, Camilla takes a prominent role in the Trooping the Colour. And in sport, Darren Gough hat-tricks give England cheer as they prepare to open hostilities against Australia.
Sky News with Michael Watkins.
Good morning. Our top story here on Sky News. Some of the world's poorest countries are to have their debts written off. The deal was brokered by the Chancellor Gordon Brown at a meeting of finance ministers from the world's richest nations. The majority of the countries affected are in Africa. 18 will have their debt wiped out immediately. They include Ethiopia, which owes almost £4 billion, and Rwanda. A further 9 countries will benefit over the next 12 to 18 months, including Congo, which owes a massive £6 billion. The initial deal adds up to some £30 billion. That may sound like a lot of money, but by comparison here in the UK, we owe over £21 billion in mortgage debt alone.
It's the first tangible step towards improving the lives of a continent's people and fulfilling the government's long-promised aim of taking Africa to the top of the international agenda. So often the objects of scorn, finance ministers representing the world's richest nations have become the subjects of guarded praise.
It's not everything we're looking for this year, but it's a hell of a lot. And it has taken a hell of a lot of work by a lot of people. And I think this is Gordon Brown's moment right now. We should really salute him.
And it's not just rock icons keeping up the pressure. Nelson Mandela addressing an AIDS benefit concert in Norway, determined to ensure agreements on debt are just the start.
So much of our common future will depend on the actions and plans of these leaders. They have an historical opportunity to open the door to hope and the possibility of a better future for all.
It looked friendly enough, but there was hard bargaining done around this table. When the G8 finance ministers came together, all had ideas about how best to help Africa, but it was far from clear they'd be able to come to a single unified position. For that reason, Gordon Brown was in no doubt that this is a momentous agreement.
This is not a time for timidity, but a time for boldness, and not a time for settling for second best, but for aiming high. And I can confirm that the G8 finance ministers have agreed 100% debt cancellation for the heavily indebted poor countries.
It's a big step, certainly, but there are still skeptics.
You can take away the debt of African countries, but unless you actually have a political infrastructure within Africa, that means no dictatorial regimes, no wars, no corruption, then what you're doing is you're running a big risk of putting a lot of money into Africa. And within 10, 20 years, we will all start crying tears that whatever vision Chancellor Brown had or Tony Blair has come to zero.
With the G8 summit still to come in July, agreement on the other major poverty reduction proposals on the table, trade justice and increased aid, remains elusive. Jonah Holt, Sky News.
Well, one of the African countries to benefit will be the former British colony of Ghana. Sky's Yunus Muller got the reaction of Ghanaians living over here.
Coffee is
extra lessons in Manchester for children of Ghanaian parents. But it's their cousins in Africa which will benefit the most from the help on offer today. Mary Bonsu arrived from Africa 40 years ago to escape poverty. She says today's historic deal to wipe Ghana's debt will be a huge relief to her family.
They said the government is trying to help the people. Yeah, and they like it, the way they are building the country, they do like it.
Bridget Bonsu was born in Britain, but is a regular visitor to Ghana.
The houses, building houses, doing well, but it's with schools and the roads and the shops, the water as well. I think it needs more help.
Ghana is one of 18 countries to benefit immediately. Currently £386 million in debt. It has a population of 21 million. Ghanaian-born UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan has long campaigned for debt relief. But one economist who frequently lectures in Ghana told me past mistakes can't be repeated.
Over the years, billions of pounds have gone in, and we haven't actually got a lot to show for it. So the concern is that if the West is going to support Africa in putting money in, we must have in place some system for ensuring that this money is going to be used properly.
This community does, however, remain convinced with the burden of crippling debt lifted, all Ghanaians could face a bright future. Yunus Muller, Sky News, Manchester.
Our Africa correspondent David Chater has given this assessment of what the debt relief will mean and whether the problem of corruption can be overcome.
The fact that the debt has been cancelled in a list of African countries, part of the heavily indebted poor countries, is indeed an historic step. But it's only the beginning. There is still a mountain to climb. They still have to work out exactly how the money that is suddenly going to be in the hands of these countries is actually going to be spent. That means they've got to get good governance. That means they've got to tackle corruption, which seems to be endemic in the African continent. It also means they've got to tackle fair trade. Now, fair trade is one of the things that you can use to get a country on its feet economically. Although they've got some extra aid coming in, it's not nearly enough. Europe has said it will double the amount of aid to Africa, but the Americans are being a bit objectionable about how much money they're going to raise to help Africa at the moment. Now, those are the issues which now are most important to Africa. This is the beginning, the very beginning, of a huge mountain of problems they're going to climb if they're going to solve the economic issues and the poverty and the number of deaths in Africa. But only the beginning. Nevertheless, though, it's been widely welcomed by most of the African nations, and it is an historic step.
The US military says up to 40 insurgents have been killed in airstrikes in Iraq. The strikes were carried out around Karabia in the west of the country, where American Marines have also been engaged in ground fighting. Earlier, 11 construction workers died when their minibus was riddled with gunfire near Baghdad. In the Iraqi capital, a suicide bomber got inside a barracks and killed 3 members of an elite police unit. The Education Secretary, Ruth Kelly, is planning to announce a major shake-up to extend the school day. Dubbed Kelly's Hours, the proposal would end the 6-hour school day and mean schools would open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Both primary schools and secondary schools will offer breakfast clubs and a range of after-school activities as part of the plan. The Conservatives are demanding to know whether Cherie Blair is getting a fee or any other benefit from her latest trip abroad. The Prime Minister's wife will attend a charity event in Malaysia next month to mark the opening of a duty-free shopping centre. Last week, Mrs. Blair provoked criticism when she delivered a lecture in Washington for a reported fee of around £30,000. There have been more signs of the growing status of the Duchess of Cornwall in the royal family. At the annual Trooping the Colours ceremony, she rode in the same carriage as Prince William. Later, she made her first appearance with the rest of the royals on the balcony at Buckingham Palace.
When it comes to pomp and ceremony, Britain has it down to a fine art. Although the Queen was born in April, it's long been a tradition that the sovereign's birthday is celebrated in the summer when the weather's better. And today's Trooping the Colour was blessed with blue skies and sunshine. Prince William, who found out he got a 2-1 in his geography degree today, rode with the Duchess of Cornwall in the official procession. There's been speculation that the prince, like his brother Harry, is destined for a military career. And there was much for him to learn from the troops on Horse Guards Parade. The ceremony dates back to the 18th century when the colours of a battalion were carried or trooped down the ranks so that they could be recognised in battle by the soldiers. These days it's the pageantry which continues to captivate people around the globe. The Queen, who attended on horseback until 1986, knows the ceremony inside out. It's been held every year of her reign except in 1955 when it was called off because of a rail strike. This year the Irish Guards took centre stage, parading their battle honour which was won in Iraq 2 years ago. But in a day dominated by history, it was the modern face of the armed forces which closed the ceremony with a traditional flypast. Victoria Brining, Sky News.
Europe and China have managed to head off a damaging row over exports. The Chinese government has agreed to trade limits on its burgeoning textile industry, which will shield European firms from a deluge of cheaper imports, but only until 2008. This report from Sky's Beijing correspondent Dominic Waghorn contains flash photography from the start.
One more Chinese-made shirt heading to Europe. As well as more casual wear, Peter Mandelson's leaving Shanghai with the boast he's averted a Chinese-European trade war.
I think it really is a significant step forward that Europe and China are able to resolve their differences, head off disputes, and make sure that these very difficult issues are tackled in a mature and grown-up and adult way, rather than going head-to-head in a way that some others do.
It's been called a miracle, but China's economic transformation is increasingly seen as a threat, especially with clothes. This is why a vast army of cheap labour can make them at a fraction of the cost in Europe. From the start of this year, world trade rules have allowed these cheap Chinese imports to flood the European market, putting European clothes makers out of work by the tens of thousands. EU Trade Commissioner Peter Mandelson and his Chinese counterpart agreed to buy them more time, phasing out restrictions on Chinese imports over a number of years. After recent setbacks for the idea of European unity, this deal shows the advantages of Europe acting with one voice. It'll need more of the same. With China making more and more of everything we buy, the EU has more to worry about in the future than just cheap Chinese clothes. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Beijing.
Stay with us here on Sky News. Coming up, the sport with Charlie Thomas, including big wins for England and Australia's cricket teams. Plus, a late winner for Real Betis in the Spanish Cup final.
The jury is out in the Michael Jackson trial. After 13 weeks of testimony, the troubled superstar's future hangs in the balance. One broadcaster brings you a unique insight into the trial that has fascinated the world. Watch Sky News for updates, the verdict live and a 60-minute special. The conclusion of the Michael Jackson trial on Sky News.
Classic movements from the Focus C-Max Compact MPV. Visit your Ford dealer for a test drive.
Hey, you didn't type in your password.
Don't have to. Biometrics.
What?
Wherever I am, I just swipe, password goes in, I'm connected. Biometrics.
Oh, bionic finger, cool. It's like 10 times stronger than a regular finger.
No, it's for passwords. No, it's more like na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na.
Na-na-na-na-na-na.
Better.
Secure wireless, made easy. Only on a ThinkPad with Intel Centrino mobile technology.
Meanwhile, back from vacation.
E cos'è questo?
Marcello!
Salve. Che cos'è questo?
L'ha ordinato Angelina.
Angelina! Angelina! Che cos'è questo?
È il nuovo sistema di telefoni, papà. Fanno l'inventario, i fogli presenza, possono inviare immagini, messaggi.
Tutto qua dentro?
Tutto là dentro.
E tu che ridi? Vai.
Doing business the new-fashioned way. Cisco Systems.
This is Sky News, an update now on the top stories. Some of the world's poorest countries will have their debts written off. The deal was brokered by the Chancellor, Gordon Brown, at a meeting of finance ministers from the world's richest nations. The majority of the countries affected are in Africa. 18 will have their debt wiped out immediately in a deal worth £30 billion. And the Duchess of Cornwall has shared a carriage with Prince William in the first Trooping the Colour procession since her marriage to Prince Charles. Later, she also appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. And the weather briefly for the day ahead, a lot cooler with some brisk northerly winds. Showers through Scotland and England with the best of the weather in the south and west. So an update now on the sport. Here's Charlie Thomas.
Thank you. Hello again. Jenson Button will start the Canadian Grand Prix in pole position. Just a month after serving a 3-race ban, the Englishman set the pace with a time of 1 minute 15.217 seconds. This is how the grid looks. Button at the front alongside Michael Schumacher. Championship leader Fernando Alonso's third, ahead of Fisichella, Montoya and Sato. England's women footballers are out of Euro 2005 after losing their final group match. Needing at least a draw against Sweden to reach the semi-finals, they conceded a goal from Anna Sjöström after just 3 minutes and never recovered. As a result, they finished bottom of Group A. Finland's win over Denmark at Bloomfield Road means they also qualify for the semis. Real Betis have won the Copa del Rey final, beating Osasuna in extra time at the Vicente Calderón Stadium in Madrid. 1-1 after 90 minutes, Betis secured the win deep into the second half of extra time. Homegrown youngster Danny scoring the winner with just a few minutes left before the game would have gone to penalties. England and Australia were both in impressive form just 2 days before they play each other for the first time this summer. England thrashed Hampshire while the Aussies outplayed Leicestershire. Darren Gough took a hat-trick as England beat Hampshire at the Rose Bowl. Andrew Strauss and Kevin Peterson against his own county, making half-centuries.
As he himself repeatedly says, never write off Darren Gough. Even at 34, he's a force to be reckoned with. His hat-trick ripped the heart out of Hampshire and helped England to win by 153 runs in this one-day warm-up at the Rose Bowl. Hampshire's response to England's 238 was grim. Simon Jones started the demolition job, Derek Kenway the first to go. And in the same over, John Lewis was next man out. Hampshire 2 down without a run on the board. The real drama, though, was still to come. Paul Collingwood was as quick as a flash to run out Vikram Solanki, which only set the scene for the Darren Gough show. Victim number 1, Craig McMillan. Number 2, John Crawley, Kevin Peterson taking a great catch. And then the hat-trick, Chris Benham, leg before. Gough bowling and blooming like a young'un in the Rose Bowl. Hampshire threw the bat for a sniff of respectability, reaching 85 before Cabirali's second wicket finished them off. If Gough was the man with the ball, Peterson was England's man with the bat. He cracked 77 off only 80 balls as he helped England to a respectable 238 after a shaky start. But a comprehensive win for England, who now go into Monday's 2020 International with their confidence high. Graham Miller, Sky News.
I thought it was a good performance to, first and foremost, get 240 odd on a spicy wicket. KP and Andrew Strauss played exceptionally well and got us to a decent target. Well, the most impressive thing was the way Goffey and Simon Jones hit them with the new ball. Yeah, there was a little bit in the wicket, but the pace was up there, the areas that they hit were there, and we put the Hampshire batsmen under a lot of pressure.
I'm really pleased with where things have gone for me this season. I've showed to people I've still got a bit in the locker, and the way today it came out was lovely. It's one of the best I've felt this season as well. So, and I had good pace. It was nice to give Warney a nice bouncer as well. So I enjoyed it, really enjoyed it today, and getting an hat-trick just topped off a great day for England.
As for the Aussies, they beat Leicestershire by 95 runs at Grace Road. Australia making 321 for 4. Matty Hayden top scoring with 107. Leicestershire never really got close. Well, Hayden and Damien Martin put on 94 for the third wicket. Hayden making a century off just 92 balls. Just 2 Australians failing to get among the runs. Adam Gilchrist caught by Claude Henderson off the bowling of Otis Gibson for 17. But all-rounder Andrew Simons tore apart the Leicestershire attack in the closing stages with an unbeaten 92 off 59 balls, including 3 sixes and 10 fours. Andy Roddick is on course for a successful defence of his title in the Stella Artois Championship at Queen's Club. He beat Radek Stepanek in 3 sets, 6-3, 2-6, 6-2, and will play Ivo Karlovic in the final.
Things felt like they started clicking a lot more in the third set today. The second set, he was just all over me and kind of had me in a little bit of a stranglehold. And you know, I was glad I was able to kind of regroup and pick it up a little bit.
Croatian Karlovic made it through to the final at the expense of number 6 seed Thomas Johansson in straight sets 6-4, 7-6. Roger Federer's preparations for the defence of his Wimbledon title remain on track. World number 1 eased through to the final of the Jerry Webber Open in Halle with a 6-4, 7-6 win over Germany's Tommy Haas. Federer faces Marat Safin in tomorrow's final after he beats Guillermo Cañas in 3 sets. Safin beats Federer earlier this year on his way to victory at the Australian Open. Wimbledon women's singles champion Maria Sharapova is through to the final of the DFS Classic in Birmingham after a straight sets win over France's Tatiana Golovin. Despite squandering a 5-2 lead in the first set, Sharapova took the opening set 7 games to 5. And the top seed made light work of the second, losing only 1 game. She defends her Edgbaston title against Jelena Jankovic.
You know, I started off really well, was pretty relaxed, and then at 5-2 kind of let her back in the match, and then just fought it out from 5-all. And then, yeah, from the second set on, I started rolling and serving a little bit better, but still not the way I would have liked to.
Obviously into the final, defence of your title against Jelena Jankovic. Have you played her before? How are you going to sort this one out?
Yeah, I've played her before. I haven't played her before on grass, so it's going to be a new experience. But I've had tough matches with her. She's always a dangerous opponent, great mover, and you know, just I'm really happy to be in the final and defending my. Hopefully, I want to defend it, but you know, you never know. I'm facing a tough opponent.
Bradford are up to 4th in the Super League after victory over Huddersfield at the Galfarm Stadium. The Bulls ran in 7 tries to Huddersfield's 4 as they cruised to a 38-20 victory. The Bulls went in at half-time with a 6-point lead. Carl Price running the length of the pitch to make the score 16-10 at the break. Huddersfield did lead shortly after the break, but tries from Robert Parker, Robbie Paul and Lee Radford saw the Bulls back to a comfortable victory. The Bulls up to 4th then, that win lifting them above Warrington. Huddersfield remain in 8th place. Gary Emerson will go into the final round of the Dutch Open in Hilversum with a 1-shot lead. He'll do well to match his performance at the first hole in round 3. His second shot went straight at the pin, into the hole to pick up an eagle and go into a 3-stroke lead at 10 under par. He stumbled slightly on the 6th and 7th there, but recovered to record a 69 and lead by 1 shot at 9 under. That's it for the moment. More in an hour.
Thank you. More now on the historic deal on debt relief. One of the prime movers in the campaign to make poverty history is U2's frontman Bono. Earlier he talked emotionally to Sky News about his own experiences in Africa and was full of praise for the efforts of Gordon Brown and Tony Blair to ease the burden of debt.
It's very, very, very exciting. I've been working on this for 7 years, and for all of the people involved in Jubilee 2000, hundreds of campaigners, church groups, student groups. You know, I'm the rock star, so I'm on the news, but I can tell you there's hundreds of soccer moms and, you know, people who've been working on this. This is a very big night right now.
Yeah, I absolutely take on board what you're saying. You say you've been working on this for 7 years. People like Bob Geldof obviously working on this. What can you tell us about what's gone on behind the scenes? Because we see your public profile, we see you now while we're talking on television, we see the politicians. How have you and people like yourself influenced those politicians to achieve what has been achieved today?
It's very hard for politicians to build a hospital in Abuja when a hospital in a district where a government minister is in trouble would be the much more political thing to do. It's very hard. What we have to do is create a sense of momentum, sense of occasion, where politicians can take a risk and step out for the world's poor. It's very hard. In the United States, where I do a lot of my work, in some states, it's a badge of honor not to do this stuff. And we have to explain to these politicians that actually they are out of touch with their constituents, and that this generation wants something to be remembered for outside of the internet, outside of the war against terror. What will we be remembered for? Something like this, the Make Poverty History campaign. This is something I will be telling my kids about. Hopefully you, Alan, will be telling your kids about. This is a real moment in time. Don't miss this. This is actually history in the making. Hundreds of thousands, millions of lives will be changed by this news tonight.
Well, millions of lives, certainly, even now. And you mentioned the conditions on countries, the fact that politically things have got to be stable. That isn't obviously the case in all African countries or other parts of the world. So what is the next step? Where do we go from here?
Well, the 3 big asks that we have for Live Aid. One was debt. One was an increase in aid flows, just to deal with the emergency of AIDS. I mean, you've got to remember, 6,000 Africans die every day of a mosquito bite. It is obscene in the 21st century that people would die of a mosquito bite, mostly children, by the way. Bed nets will sort it. There's new vaccines on the way. We can actually fix that problem. So an increase in aid flows, that's the second thing we're looking for, as well as the debt. And then stuff on trade. So tonight what you have is a deal, thanks to Gordon Brown. The British should really be proud tonight. They've been fighting for this.